Welcome to our next project. Now we are going to create a contact form. This is a very good practice because in almost all the website there is a page with a contact form in it. So now we are going to practice how we can build this contact form and handle its data and store them in somewhere so we can later come back and see the information. Like any other project, please pause the video, try to do it yourself, and let's see how I would do it. Like I said before, and I can't stress that enough, as long as the solution works, it's okay. If your code is not exactly like my code, it's completely fine as long as you are getting the proper response. If your final result is correct, if you are handling the data properly, it's not important if every variable name, every line is not like my solution. As I said before, there are many solutions to every problem. You just need to find yours. Now pause the video, try to do it yourself, and then come back and let's see how I would do it. So now let's get started. The very first thing I need to do is to create my form. So let's do it. Let's create a file, new PHP. It would be my form. Let's say HTML. Then I have the head and the title is form. That's the most creative title I had in mind. Now let's go to the body part. Perfect. Now here we have a form. This form has some inputs. And finally it has a submit button, type submit. Now let's see what was the data that we needed. Well, the very first thing is we needed to have an email and a text and a name. Okay, input type text, the name is name and placeholder is please specify your name. Okay, I would also have email, please specify your email, and then I have a text area so the user can write their message, and the text area name would be message, and the placeholder would be please write your message here. Okay, now let's go to the page and see how it looks like. Localhost PHP course and then form.php, and as you can see I have the name, the email, and the message. It's ugly, I know, I don't care, it's not a CSS course. Now let's go back to our file. Now I need to pass action. I want to handle it in handle.php, and I want to add method. This can be get or post. In this form I prefer post. You could use get, no problem. I just don't like a long message appearing in the URL, so I'm going to use post, and then everything is finished here. Now let's go back to our form handle.php and let's see how we can handle this form. Okay, let's create a file, PHP file called handle. Okay, in my handle.php I can get all the data with the super global variable of post. I had name and I had email and I had message. Now we want to check if they are set and if they are not empty. If empty, post name, echo name is required. Let's copy that 3 times. Let's pass email and let's pass message, and let's see if we get these echoes. Let's go to our project in the browser, in our form, refresh the page. We pass nothing. We go there, name is required, name is required, name is their echoes are working correctly, but the message of the echoes need to be changed. This one is email and this one is message. And let's go back to our browser, run the code again. Now name is required, email is required, and message is required. Okay, perfect. Till now everything works. Let's go back to our code. Now Like this, we could store the variables. Right now we just echo something, but later we can redirect back to the form or exit the code. But for now this is enough. Let's go to the next part of our problem and see what it was, and then come back and combine all the solution together in a clean manner. Then the next part was store the data and the time of contact in a JSON file. So we could have all this information in an array. So like contact equals to an associative array of data. It could be like name, then email and message. We also needed to contact time, so we can say time equals to this. Name would be post name, email would be post email, and message would be post message. And time, as we have already learned, we could pass some date YMDHIS. Okay, let's use comma for all of them. We have this, and then we convert it to JSON encode, and then contact, and then we would write it in a file, but it would be only one file and one contact. So let's see how we can do it for multiple contacts. We need to have a file. Let's say file name equals to contacts.json. The very first thing we need to do is to read the data from this file. So we can say fopen in the main path file name, and then open it for reading, and let's close the file equals to this, and then close the file. Okay, here if there is such a file, we are going to open it and read it. If PHP is not able to find this file, it's going to create the file for us. So at the end we have a file called contact.json, but the first time it would be empty, and after that later when there are more contacts it wouldn't be empty. So let's go through the lines. Line equals to fget s file, and while this line is not equal to false, read it again and again and again. But what do we want to do? Because it's a JSON file, we want to store all the text and then decode it to an array. So let's say I would have a variable called JSON text equals to this, and then I want to add the current line to this JSON text. It would be JSON text equals to JSON text concatenated with this line, and then read the next line and the next line and the next line till the file is finished. Then at the end JSON text would be a file. We can check if the JSON file is empty, meaning the file itself there was no line and the JSON file is just an empty string. If it's empty, then my contact array contacts would be an empty array. Else if it's not empty, I can decode it to an array for my contacts. Contacts equals to JSON decode this JSON text, and I wanted to be associative, so I passed true. Now at the end here I would have a contact array, and I want to add to this array. So if it's empty, this is going to be the first item, otherwise it's going to be added to the end of this item. So later I can encode these contacts to JSON, back to JSON, and write it to the file. Let's open the file again, but for writing, and let's close it before I forget. I always forget. Now I can write fwrite, and then JSON contacts equals to this, and write the JSON contacts. Perfect. Now, if I pass some data here and we pass this part, we come here, we open the file and we read from it, and then we convert it to an array, we add to this array, we encode it back to JSON, and then we write the file to the JSON file. But if there is nothing at the moment, if the data that we have said that it's required are not passed, we just simply echo something and then go on with the file, and we will definitely get some empty results here. It's not suitable for us, so we need to do something here. Here I want to say, okay, I want to exit the code. Here we can exit the code after these messages, like exit. If we do this, the rest of the code won't run. It wouldn't be so user friendly. At the moment, we would stop running the code. So let's go back to the code to see what happens. Our form, and refresh the page. And now if I go there, it's going to echo these messages for me, and then the rest of the code won't run. Or I could redirect back to the form itself. So I could use the header function in order to redirect to another URL. In PHP, we can use header function, header, and then we pass a header to our file. Location would be .php. Now let's go back to the code to see how it works. And now as you can see, it has gone there and came back here, but I didn't get any messages, so I have no idea what happened. I think like, oh, my code is not working or something like that. So let's add a friendly message. So here I want to pass a query parameter like submitted equals to false. Now if I go to form, I want to get this query and see if it's false. It means that I have submitted the form was not successfully submitted, and then I got back to here with a message that I need to fill all the fields. So where can I put it here? At the moment, all of this is HTML. I can open PHP tags here, PHP, and then close it, and inside this I can write PHP code. So I want to say if it's not empty, this get submitted, then it means that we have submitted the form. We can say, okay, if it's not empty, let's say if it's false or true. Later we can say if it's true, we can echo some value like your form was submitted. If this get submitted equals to false, then we can say echo all the fields are required, otherwise echo your form has been submitted successfully. And if there was no get submitted, then do nothing, just show the form. Let's go back to the browser. In my form, if I pass some values, submitted equals to true, it would tell me that your form has been submitted successfully. But if I say it's false, it's going to tell me nothing. So what's the issue and why there is an error on line 14? If I go back to my code on line 14, I forgot to close this. I had put that there. Now let's go back to the browser and see if it works. If it's false, it's going to tell me all the fields are required. And if it's true, it's going to tell me your form has been submitted. Perfect. Now if I submit this form, let me remove that. This is the default form. If I submit the form, it's going to come here and it would check for them, and because some of them are not true, then it's going to go back to that form with the submitted of false. But at the moment, even if they are submitted, it's going to come here and redirect back to that page. So how can we fix that? We can put this inside any of them. So if any of them are problematic, then just simply redirect, or we can create a value like say by default redirect is false. So we are not going to redirect, but if the name is not filled, then redirect is true. If the email is not this, we can redirect true. If the message is not this, we can redirect true. Here I did this, but as I said, there are many approaches. I separated them because I thought maybe later, instead of redirect true, I could do some other approach and specify which one is required, and then there I could make it red and say this one is required. But you could put all of them inside one condition and say if name is empty or email is empty or message is empty, then redirect would be true, and this simply works. So here, before redirecting, we check if redirect is not true, then do this, otherwise continue with the code. So let's check till now if our code works. If I submit, it's going to tell me fwrite expect at least 2 parameters. Now here there is a problem. If we go back to our code, you have probably guessed it, we check if not redirect. So if it's false, why would we redirect if it's false? Because of that mistake, our code ran through this part and came here and told us that fwrite has a problem. We can fix fwrite as well. At the moment we had this fwrite, we forgot to pass file. We passed the file and then the JSON context. We have also fixed this. If I go to my browser again and resubmit the form, it's going to redirect me back to the form. Every time that I do this, it's going to do that. All the fields are required. Now let's pass some data like AMIR test at example.com. Even if one of the fields is empty, it's going to come back. Let's refill the form with test example.com and hello, this is the message. Okay, now none of the fields are empty, so I expect to submit the form, create a file and store all of them there. Let's see, it has stored everything perfect without any error. Now let's go back to the code itself. It has come through here, it has read the file and then added the new contact to it. So now I can see context.json in my file. Let's see how it looks. If I click on it, it has a name, an email, and the message, and the time was this. Perfectly fine. Now let's create another message to see if it would be added to the end of this list. If I go to my form again, and this is the second message, and submit it again. Again, I got no error. Let's go back to my code and let's see how it looks like. Perfect. Name AMIR test at example.com, and this is the second message. It has worked perfectly fine, no problem. Now the last thing is that at the moment when I submit the form, I come here, but I want to go back to my form .php and say okay, submitted equals to true. So I would get this message, your form has been submitted successfully. How can I do that? Let's go back to the code. I come here in the handle till the end. If everything has gone smoothly, I can say header, redirect back to the code to form and set submitted to true. Perfect. So let's submit another form. Let's go to form.php and say AMIR test be at example.com. This is the last message. Hopefully submitted, and your form has been submitted successfully. Let's go back to the form. In the context, as you can see, I've got the last message as well. Perfect. Everything is working perfectly fine. At the moment, we do not check for data validation. If they pass correct name, if they pass correct email, we do not sanitize the data. We will learn about data validation and sanitizing the data later. But for now, this is enough. We have created a submit form. Our clients can come here and submit their request to us with their name, their email. We can later add some data like phone and request type and subject and things like that. At the moment we are storing everything in a JSON file, which in another file we can read the JSON and show it to the admin of this website. And later when we learn about database, we could add to database instead of JSON. At the moment for this project, this is enough. If you have done something different, the way you store it in a file is different. If you didn't use any redirect, it's okay, no problem. As long as you didn't get any errors and your code worked and you could store the messages, everything is fine. As I said, there are many approaches to every project. That's the end of our contact form project. Let's continue learning more about PHP.